And welcome to Habs Unfiltered, episode 139. I'm joined now by my co-host, Matt Smith,
Afternoon.
and our special guest, Grant McCagg of Recrutes.ca.
Good day.
Sporting the Recruits gear, I see.
Oh yeah, it's great stuff. Shout out to Nick from Insta Customs in Montreal for making up all this stuff for me and not charging me. That's the real key.
When the price is free, it's always the best.
Oh, definitely. But he makes good stuff. So you ever need anything customized, t-shirts or whatever, get in touch with Insta Customs. He didn't even tell me to say that, so
More free stuff.
definitely.
I'd also like to mention the fact that Habs Unfiltered is brought to you by Manscaped.ca. Remember to use your Manscaped products using the code Unfiltered20. So this episode, we'll just jump right to it. We're going to talk a little bit about the Calgary series, some general Habs talk. Patrick Roy is talking about an NHL return and what that would mean. We'll talk a little bit about the Canadiens' prospects, and we will discuss some Recruits.ca articles that have been released recently, such as a first-round NHL study and a few other items. So we'll just jump right into it, and we'll start with the Habs talk. Grant, as you are our guest, what was your take on the last three games of the Canadiens in Calgary? And please don't be gentle.
I think I only saw about half because I fell asleep during the second period, I think, of all three games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was boring hockey. I'm glad that they're done with Daryl Sutter for the rest of the year, because that trap, boy, brings back memories of New Jersey Devils in the 2000 era. But they managed to get the one win that they had to get. If they hadn't won one of them, I think they're the panic threshold just goes up another 50%. So even though they left it to the last one, and the anxiety in Habs land was sky high, as we know, going into the game, they managed to win the last one. And I think that bodes well for them being able to beat out Calgary for a playoff spot. But Allen, I think, was pretty good, and sure, it made me realize that it was so important for them to get the quality backup that they needed when the season started, because invariably Price is always hurt at one point during the season, and you had to have a guy that could come in and at least keep them in some games. It's not Allen's win percentage isn't great, but I think the main reason for that is that they haven't been scoring to support him. So luckily they got two last night, and that was enough to win. So hopefully they can play 500 the rest of the regular season and clinch that last spot.
Yeah, Matt, what was your take on at least on last night's game?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I didn't see the first two games of the series as I was working night shift. Last night was the first one that I saw. However, as Grant said, it was a snooze fest. It really was. It was very boring hockey to watch. The only thing that really kept me awake during that game is the fact that Caulfield was playing and that I didn't want to miss it. And that was really the only reason. Like he was, even though he didn't get on the score sheet, he was in the plays. He was trying to find open ice. There was a lot of times where he was standing in a spot ready to take a shot. He made some good passes. He had 4 shots, played over 15 minutes. And we see in Caulfield what he came as advertised. He's a volume shooter. He's going to shoot from all angles. He's going to create some. He's going to create some offense. I said, even though he didn't put the puck in the net, I think he had a solid debut. My thought on the game, as I said, it was a snooze fest. But big on Weber to score a goal, and without some, I'm not gonna say key guys in the lineup. Like Drouin's out, Byron's out right now. Gallagher's out, Price is out. we're doing what we can with what we got right now, and as Grant said, with the system that Daryl Sutter has in place right now, it's very, 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 very dry. It's very hard to watch, especially after a night shift. And I'm really hoping that they take this win and they don't just sit back on it. They got a couple tough games coming up, and right now it's looking like they're likely to play the Leafs in the first round. So anytime they have the opportunity to play the Leafs, this is when they got to really put the pressure on them and say, this is what you're going to get when we play you in the playoffs in the first round.
Yeah. But the Leafs don't play a trap. Not like
no, they don't. They don't.
No.
But
they play wide open hockey.
But this is going to be. These are the Yes, these games mattered, like they all do. But these ones are the ones that really did matter against Calgary, and I think that you need to really put the the foot on the throat of your opponent, especially when we know that they're likely going to play the Leafs in the first round.
Sure. And they've got a few games against the Leafs prior to the playoffs starting.
That's right.
I think it's 4. So we'll get a little bit of a preview there, and they'll be able to build some hate more so.
Yeah.
But for the Calgary series, you guys are right. It was boring as shit.
It was.
Oh my God, it was bad.
Any idea on how many games Edmonton has left with Toronto? Because they're 5 back with a game in hand. I wouldn't put it past Edmonton finishing first yet.
It could very well happen. And Montreal plays good hockey against Edmonton, so I'd be all for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see the last 10 games. If you're within 5 points with a game in hand, it's happened a lot of times where, especially if you have head-to-head games against the team that's in front of you, that 5 points can evaporate pretty quickly. So it's not like Toronto's getting great goaltending right now. They're kind of on a little bit of a slide. So, I'm not discounting Edmonton getting first place yet, but yeah, it'll be probably one of those 2 teams.
Yeah. So Grant, you brought up Jake Allen and how he played against the Flames. I actually have his numbers up here. So in 6 games against the Flames, he had a .937 save percentage and a 1.86, and he went 2-4.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the Canadians aren't averaging even 2 goals a game against them.
Exactly. So he didn't have the run support. That's for damn sure. But it definitely wasn't his fault that they lost those games.
And a good point about the Caulfield creating. He had 1/6 of Montreal's total shots last night.
Yeah.
That's one player out of 20 or 19 or whatever skaters. Yep. So he had. He came as advertised.
Yeah, exactly. And Caulfield had an incredible 75.82 expected goals for percentage in that game.
He wasn't on. I don't know if you got the offensive zone, defensive zone starts, but it seemed like just about every face-off that he was on for was in the defensive zone too, which isn't ideal.
Several.
I understand why they put him with Danault, because the rookie, and it's got to be defense first. It's got to not lose. They got to have him with the best defensive centerman. But they were out against the Monahan line all game, and the majority of the time the puck was in their end. I would have liked him to have started with third line matchup with Kotkaniemi, who has more better playmaking skills than Danault, but they went the conservative approach like they usually do, and unfortunately he spent most of the game in his own zone, which isn't that's not his bread and butter, but I thought he looked okay in that regard too.
Yeah, a little bit of a mismatch on a third line would have helped him out a little bit more, especially with Kotkaniemi's playmaking abilities. He did get some power play time, about 2 minutes worth, and he did help generate a scoring chance during one of the power plays, which kind of led to the 5-on-3.
Yeah, for sure. First shift of the game, he came down close to scoring. That would have been something. I
Yeah.
would have probably hit the ceiling. I was pretty excited when he got the puck there, and here we go.
He would have been the last or the last player to score in his debut since future Habs legend Eric Stahl.
Yeah. And also the biggest part is Casual Spal, we're going to give away 8 wings if he scored a goal. So people in Quebec would have been super excited to get free wings.
Definitely.
Alas.
What if he just scored 2?
I think chickens would have gone extinct.
I was happy last night just seeing all the positive messages on Twitter.
For a change.
For a change. Like you had a goal scoring top prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, didn't get on the score sheet, and nobody freaked out about it. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was really nice. Like I thought I stepped on a bug and went back in time or something. I don't know what happened, but I was pretty happy about it.
Well, it's not like he didn't create offensive opportunities either. Like he had some shots.
And he wasn't a liability.
God, no. He was able to strip pucks. He was back checking. Played well.
Yep.
And
wish I could say the same for the rest of the lineup.
He got 6 more minutes than Eric Stahl, so that was a positive too.
Yeah.
Now, I wish I could say the same about playing well for the rest of the lineup. I mean, they had a hard time trying to break that trap. That was painful to watch. And there's no secret to how to break the trap. There's only one way to do it, and that's put pucks a few feet behind each defensive layer and having support coming in. But the Canadiens were flat-footed for most of that game. They were more concerned with the defensive side. You saw a lot of passes where the defender was trying to clear his zone for a zone exit. He'd make a quick pass up to the forward, and it was just ahead of him because the forward was flat-footed. He was waiting a little bit too far back, trying to ensure that he was in the right defensive posture, but it just kept happening over and over and over. They didn't really get that chance to break through until after the second goal when Toffoli buried that chance. That kind of opened things up. And I know it sounds weird to say, they opened it up and then they barely shot again, but Calgary wasn't as hard onto this neutral zone trap because they were pushing to try to get something. And that's when the Canadiens, like Grant said, flipped the script on them and started trapping them in return.
Yeah. With the system that they play, with that the Canadiens play right now, you play the trap against them, Canadiens aren't going to do a damn thing because now they're, instead of going into the mentality of, the dump and chase and everything, which we've been so used to, which works against a trap, with their little short pass mentality and dropping the puck before I hate that drop the puck before the blue line bullshit. Yeah. Right. All right. Especially on the power play. All you got to do is play the trap against the Canadiens. You're going to win every game, or you're going to have a very good opportunity. You're going to have a very good chance to win every game.
Especially if Montreal doesn't score first.
Yeah.
Like it's such a key for them lately is they have to score. They have to score first goal or the first two, or they're in trouble. Especially if you employ the trap against them. I mean, yeah, that back pass thing, and then also going behind your net and standing there for 20 and wasting 20-30 seconds off of the power play time.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that. No. I know that, and then there's always a guy, Alain Cloutier, zone entries though. They had 4 zone entries on. The key stat for me on a power play is goals, not zone entries. Yeah. I don't care if they had 20 zone entries.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything with it, it's irrelevant to me.
That's right. I'm happy that they're starting to set up a little bit better than what they used to. But right. As you said, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, it's putting pucks in the net. It's not how well you can move the puck around and right.
I mean, I get stats, advanced stats and that, but I don't. Entering the zone is part of it, but there's a lot more to scoring a goal than entering the zone, and just this delay, this 30 seconds of killing time on the power play just will never make sense to me. There's an open guy out there somewhere because you got the man advantage. Get it to him, skate your butt off. I think it's more about The biggest problem with their power play is the lack of urgency. It's like you lay off a bit because, oh, we got the man advantage, we can take our time. You gotta push. You gotta push when you have the man advantage. Try to score as quickly as you can. You've got an advantage, utilize it. But it seems like it's all about setting up and working it around, getting it back to the point. It's the same thing over and over again. Instead of it'd be great to see the odd 2-on-1 and breakaway and stuff on the power play, but it seems to never happen with the Canadians. A long stretch pass where you get behind the defense. That's not happening on the power play. It's all get it back to the point and pray. And
Yeah,
could
they're
use a
very
little more
passive with
creativity.
they're very passive with the puck, and that's why defenders, when they're playing on the PK, know to attack the puck carrier, force the play, because they're static. They're not moving that well. But last night's game, I saw a little bit more puck movement. They were more urgent with that, and it was a drawn up play with the one that they scored on the 5-on-3. It's, by the way, the first 5-on-3 goal they've had all season. So
Mhm.
that's impressive in itself, that it took this frigging long to get a 5-on-3 goal because they're so passive. But in this case, they attacked the puck right away off the faceoff, got it down low, created a screen where Weber can step into, and he just buried it. So
Caulfield's going to help
yeah,
the power play with he's not static. He moves around a lot. And I noticed the last couple of games too, they always had KK over on the left wall, and they're starting to utilize him for his one-timer on the right side. It hasn't paid off yet, but I saw him score a beauty in the under 18s there with his with a slapper from the right side that I think is gonna start to pay off when they move him around. They got to move him around a little more, and I think they're starting to, and that's going to be key too. I'm glad to see that Stahl was off. He didn't have a power play time last night. He went from being the first line center to not being on either power play unit, which was interesting. I think that might be one of the most important factors with Caulfield being in. He basically replaces Stahl in the on the power play units, and I think that's a huge upgrade right now.
well, if you want to build a meritocracy, which is what he said he wanted, this is what you have to do. He gave him a chance. He didn't do anything with that chance. Try someone else.
Yeah, I don't think he had a power play point.
No.
And if you look, I looked at his stats, the power play the last, all year, it's not good. He's not a power play guy right now at this point in his career. He's going to have to be a, defensive centerman, or maybe even a winger come playoff time. I noticed at the end of the game, he made some nice plays, and he's still a very smart player. There's lots of things to like about him. He's a big guy. He can move guys out of the way. He can really help you defensively. He can win some big draws and stuff. But to hope that he's going to be your answer as your first power play centerman, I think that they finally realized that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, they're going to have to start to really rely on their youth to step in. So Suzuki and Kotkaniemi have to become their center weapons on the power play.
Yeah, maybe hopefully Baling too, if he gets a look in the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, and if they they get behind a couple of games, it'd probably be the only way it happens. But I'd love to see Paling get a shot in the playoffs. The last time that the Canadians did anything in the playoffs, like won the cup, 92. I think I've mentioned this last time, but Demers used piles of young players, rookies, infusion, that energy infusion, that adrenaline. And I'm hoping that this year, for the first time under Bergevin, a little less conservatism, utilize these first round picks that you've been stocking up, and look that they're ready to go, and hopefully the young guys really get a chance to help the team.
They also set a standard too with everybody's first game of the year. I mean, they got to go out without a bucket, fly, show off their Gidafka locks.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Now, well, we talked a little bit about that series. We talked about a bit of what the Canadians are missing, and now we'll talk about Patrick Roy. So Roy is rumored to have, well, not rumored. It's been reported that he's hired a management firm to help him return to the NHL, find him an NHL job, and of course, being Patrick Roy and wanting to go back to the NHL, he is now the front runner on Habs Twitter to take over as GM, head coach, president, owner, everything. So, Grant, as you're the guest, what do you think of that hot trash?
Oh, all those championships he's won in Quebec City
Well, he's got the one.
since he went back to
Yep.
junior. He's
Keeps
got one
losing to
left.
Halifax somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah. Quebec hasn't exactly been a powerhouse since he went back, have they?
No.
That's with him running the whole show. I don't know. I'd maybe hire a guy that's actually been winning the last 3 years if you go that route, not just the big name. I'm not sold on Patrick Roy being a competent GM. First of all, where's his experience at the pro level as a GM? None. I don't think Bergevin. Well, I mean, if they miss the playoffs, he might lose his job, but I really don't think that that's the answer right now. It's one more year regardless, I think. I mean, there was talk a month ago that he could be GM of the year, and what's happened since then, as far as what he's done, that has made him all of a sudden just, oh, he's got to be fired. Well, it's the team underachieving. That, I guess you can blame it on him, but the Gallagher injury, they put up a stat the other day. Their record without Gallagher the last 5 years when he's had those injuries, it's just amazing, the difference. It's like they're a 650 team when he's playing and they're a 350 team when he's not, something like that. So it's really hurt, and it's why they've fallen back to the pack to a certain degree. He's just such a key. He's the
He's the
straw that stirs
he's
the
the
drink.
heartbeat of the team, really. You take the
He is.
heartbeat out of the team, it dies, right? So
Yeah, no, it's just, and I don't know. I mean, Patrick Roy, maybe coach, maybe, but I'm not. What did he achieve in Quebec either? In Colorado.
it is one good year.
That's right, one
Yep.
good year, but he had a lot of talent too.
Yep.
I don't know. I'd take Joel before I take Roy if
100 times.
if you were
100
going
times
that-
out of 100. Yeah.
if you're going that route, and I definitely take Andre Tournier.
Yep.
Either one of those guys, even Guy Boucher, I'd rather have as coach than Patrick Roy. There's other good francophone choices, and obviously that'll be, it'll be a francophone. But and yeah, I'm not very high on that scenario.
For me, it's his track record that causes me to say no. I mean, as a player, he quit on the Canadians and demanded a trade. As a coach, he quit on Colorado and just walked away unannounced. He did similar to the Quebec Rampal the first time, and he is he's kind of doing the same now. At least this time, it's the off season is about to start in the QMJHL. He's exploring options. He hasn't announced anything yet, but he's going to end up walking away. Hopefully, before he leaves Quebec, he actually hires a coach to take his spot before he takes off. But his track record of just quitting and walking away because he's not getting his way is why I would say buyer beware on him.
Yeah, our Yorkie agrees with you on that. He was backing you up on that one. What do you say, Matt?
Um, there's a lot of teams right now that need help in their offices or that need help behind the bench. But it's not just the Canadians that are going to have an opening or that are potentially going to have an opening. And I'm saying that because Ducharme's still an interim coach, right? He hasn't been given the full reins as a head coach yet. So teams like Arizona, Buffalo, Carolina, more or less Carolina's going to bring back their coach, but he's not under contract for next year. Columbus, is Tortorella going to come back? Detroit, Vancouver, etc. There's still a lot of teams out there that he could potentially go to. It's not just the Canadians. And I know that with the Montreal media and with Habs Twitter and everything like that, as soon as Patrick Waugh's name came up, it was instantly they're talking to him. And they've already come out, and the firm has already come out and said there hasn't been any discussions between the Canadians and this client. So can I see him returning to the NHL? Absolutely. I think an owner, a GM, somebody is going to come out and say, we can bring in just for the name. And he did win a Jack Adams in his first year. He does show that he can coach at a certain level, but it's more the attitude piece. However, I can see him returning to the league next year.
Yep,
In some sort of capacity. He'll get some sort of job, whether it's a hockey ops job, maybe an assistant GM job somewhere to get his feet wet somewhere else, or maybe even a head coaching job. It's hard to say. The guy's got his career as a player is incredible. Like he won 4 cups. He did very good things for the Canadians. He did very good things for Colorado. Hard to say who he's going to come back with, but there's opportunity there, and just because of his name, I think we'll see him back next year.
Out of all the great coaches, if you name the top 10, 20 coaches of all time, were any of them great players?
Not a lot of them were.
No.
It
doesn't translate. Yeah, you got to go back 60, 70 years though.
Yeah. It is hard to find. It is hard to find.
It's I mean, that doesn't translate. And the awards thing, yeah, he won, Pierre Dorian almost won Executive of the Year 3 years ago. Would you hire him? I mean, I don't know. Awards are just they're not always deserving.
I think honestly, just because of his name, I think we'll see him back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If he wants to come back, someone will hire him for something. But and it might even be as a coach. It might even be Montreal. I don't. I don't know that. Obviously, it depends. If Dom doesn't win in the first round, it's up in the air for sure.
Yeah.
If he doesn't make the playoffs, then I don't think he's back. So
I think it's going to depend even if they lose in the first round, it's going to be how they lost.
Yeah, it could be.
If they're not in any of the games and they look really sloppy, like they have lately,
yeah,
they might still consider bringing him back, but I think he's going to have to interview for the job.
Yeah. Well, if they get swept 4 straight and lose 5-0 or whatever each game,
well, absolutely,
probably gone. Yeah.
And everyone will be asking for his hand anyway. So.
Yeah, and I think the key for this team is get to the playoffs, because I really do think that they have Bergevin has built a team that should compete in the playoffs, whether they win or not. But I mean, they've got a defense that we all see it. We see it every year. The clutch and grab comes back to a certain degree at playoff time. They don't call the penalties quite as much as they do in the regular season, and they've got a kind of defense and system that should keep them in games at least at playoff time.
Yeah. If they allow a little bit of play to happen, unlike last night when Sherratt put his hand on somebody and they all every arm in the fucking building went up, right? So
that was I didn't like that call,
right? So Sherratt is a playoff hockey type player. He's a guy that's, if he can play his style and he can play the body and make it rough for the other team, that's where he's going to excel.
Edmondson, Weber, all these guys are playoff. Gallagher comes back. That's going to be such a boost.
That's going to be a huge spark. Huge.
Anderson should be a playoff player. There's Lehkonen always steps up. The guy plays, incredible come playoff time because he just competes so hard. Byron even, is a character kind of playoff guy. So KK and Suzuki, if they play like they did, last playoff, there's a lot of playoff type players on the team. So I could see them. They're not going to be an easy out. They won't have the pressure on them because they won't be favored, and there won't be a hometown advantage for the first place team because there won't be fans.
True.
So
yeah, as of right now too, the NHL is talking about possibly running a bubble again, but this time in the US.
Yeah.
I think they will we brought this up before. I think they'll do that when the final 4 teams.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the first 2 rounds.
No, I think it'll be the final 4 teams. They'll run a bubble, or there was talks that Canadian teams would have an adopted U.S. city and they would go to their arena. So Toronto might go to Buffalo, or Winnipeg might go to Minnesota or something like that, right? Something like that. Just so we don't have to do the whole border jumping thing.
Montreal to Vermont.
There you go.
Play in Hartford. We can listen to the Brass Bonanza.
Yeah.
A lot of fans would enjoy that. A little bit of nostalgia.
Yeah.
I mean, we're playing the old Norris style hockey, so why not, right?
Bring back Torrey Robertson.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. There's a lot of playoff type hockey players there. You mentioned Anderson did really well against Tampa Bay when Columbus swept them. Perry, he did an excellent job in Dallas last year and has pretty much every time he makes the playoffs.
Sure.
Yeah, and the defense is more static, but more playoff ready because they do the clutch and grab. And Matt, you mentioned that penalty against Schrott last night. That's a penalty. It's a penalty. Call it every time. But what cheesed me off.
There's a lot of that during the game, though.
There was at least 30 of those throughout the game, and that's the first time they called it.
Yeah,
so that is what pisses
bad.
Me off.
Yeah.
Now, I think we pretty much killed off that whole way to the NHL stuff. We can talk a little bit about the latest that came out of Recrutes.ca. Grant, you did a first round NHL study and you put together a ton of work putting a grade and a point system to each team's drafting work over the last, I think it was 2007 to 2016. So there was quite a bit there. So why don't you walk us through a little bit of what you did and how the Canadians did?
Yeah, it was, I started off doing a couple of points per pick and points per game and a few categories. And I said, well, I got to keep adding here to really make it fair. The more I dug into it, because I looked at when you're drafting 1 to 5, what's the average number of points that each pick has gotten, right down to 26 to 30. And I mean, the difference is astronomical as you go down. So it's so important where your draft position is. And I know because Montreal, just you hear it all the time that, Montreal can't draft in the first round and they're lousy in the first round. And there are a lot of factors involved in that. And the main one being that they usually picked outside of the top 15. And when you do that, the odds that you get a productive NHLer are less than 50%. So you can look at Tenori being a bust, but the stats don't back that up. And the fact is that he's still playing in the NHL right now. You know, all of the Habs first round picks, with the exception of Sherbak and LeBlanc, are still playing. They're on NHL rosters right now. You pick somebody in the 20 to 30 range, and 7-8 years later he's still playing in the NHL. He's not a bust. You know, Montreal's expectation. Well, look at Pasternak. Well, sure, look at Pasternak, but he is the exception as opposed to the rule.
Yeah.
You know, there aren't many 25th overall picks that end up being a David Pasternak. Like that's a once a decade thing, you know. So you look at it, and you have to look at all the teams. You have to consider that every team has had guys that didn't make it, that were picked in the first round, and you have to look at how many defensemen were taken, because if you only look at points, defensemen score a lot less than forwards, so that had to be factored in as well. And when I got it all done, Montreal was in the top 10, which, considering that, you know, the narrative that they're horrible at picking in the first round, I thought it kind of demonstrated that that's not the case. They're not the best, but they're far from the worst in that period. And since then too, since 2016, I think they picked, you know, Kotkaniemi, Caulfield, and Gouli are all very good picks. So that wasn't even considered in it. You know, people can argue, well, why did you start 2007? Well, people always cherry pick, and they say, well, between 2008 and 2012, you know, or 2011. Well, they didn't pick in the top 15 any of those drafts. 3 of them were, you know, they picked in the 20s. They were poor drafts, and you can look back at it and say, okay, well, you know, they didn't pick great picks, but it's also cherry picking to start at 2008. And I thought you had to do a decade, and you couldn't really go from the last 3 years because there's not enough data on the players. So I chose 2017 to be fair to a certain degree to the Canadians, because it's the only, between 2007 and 12, they did not pick in the top 15 if you don't include McDonough. Like if you only went, and it really weighed against the Canadians when you cherry pick it, that, you know, specifically. I could have gone back to 2005, but Price is the only goalie picked in the top 10 since 2005. And it's kind of hard to weigh a goalie stats against players, forward stats and defenseman stats, because they don't get points, right? And the key factor, it was points per pick. So it didn't really make sense to start with that either. I mean, this is a random, to a certain degree, it's random. And it's far from perfect, what the final tally, but even if you take away defense picks, even if you take away position of pick, Montreal still was in the top half among NHL teams as far as success in the first round in that period. So I think it demonstrates at least that while they weren't the best drafting in that period, that they were far from the worst.
Yeah, I found it interesting that St. Louis was at the top of your list. And considering that St. Louis has been picking about middle of the pack for the majority of that time frame. So what do you think they were doing right?
Well, they were picking, you know, they weren't picking busts. They were picking guys that have contributed at the NHL level quite well. You know, guys like Tarasenko, Perron, all these guys were picked outside of the top 15 and become very productive NHL players. That, you know, they've been one of the more consistent drafting teams, and Armstrong ended up going to become GM of Billy Armstrong. Very good, really good scout, and I think he was deserving to get that job in Arizona. He's got a lot of work to do, but proof is in the pudding with their draft results.
Do you think their development method had a heavy hand in some of this success?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I think they have a good scouting staff, and it showed in where they are in the rankings, number one.
Well, I'm sure it had a bit of help to get them that cup too.
Yeah,
Lucky,
definitely.
lucky bastards.
Yeah, and you trade away guys. It's another. You see the stats. Well, not a pick between 2006 and 2000 and what is it now? 17. That none of the first round picks of the Habs are with the team. So like that's apparently a negative, but if the drafted players are assets, and you trade, not a lot of St. Louis's picks were necessarily on the team either. They traded away guys when need be to help build a contender. So I don't think it's the important thing is how the players do in the NHL, if they become good or not, whether it's with your team or not. It's not that they have to be lifetime players on your team, because there's so much movement in the NHL. So
Asset management, moving a player that you picked for something that you need. I'm sure nobody would line up and say they'd rather have Galchenyuk at this point over Anderson.
yeah, exactly, and that's what it ended up being. Has Montreal been great with their asset management with the first round picks? No, I think that would be that would be an issue. And development, that's they maybe gave up on Tenorti a little early, McCarron a little early, guys that they let get away with it, preferring veterans that didn't really end up doing anything anyway, that they picked up, and I would have some issue with that, but that's not on the scouting staff.
No. Now that this all moves into the realm of development and what's the best methodology, and we could argue that the Canadians have a much better development method now than they did just 3 years ago. So that should make a difference in this new retooling plan that Bergevin has put into place. But yeah, the scouting. I mean, I went through some of your numbers, and I found that 2012 seemed to be a very weak year.
Yeah,
That was the year the Canadians won that lottery, moved up to third. So
that's right. No, they weren't. The luck wasn't with them in that regard. If it had
they were
been
bad in the wrong years.
no, exactly. It's timing to a certain degree, and even still, they got one of the top 3-point producers from that draft. So you can criticize it if you like that they didn't get a Mitch Marner, but there was no Mitch Marner at third overall that year.
Yeah, they weren't fighting to see who would get McDavid or Eichel. It was Yakupov.
Yeah, that's right. Who I had
believe-
third overall, by the way. I just thought I'd mention that.
I do remember
I should have had him
hockey.
13th overall, but
Yeah. Well, hockey, what was it? Hockey HF boards was all in. Fail for Nail. Everybody was just going on and on about fail for Nail.
yeah. No, I got a lot of flack for not having him first overall from people that thought I was crazy, but I had some concerns that he played a bit of too much of a Russian style hockey there, and it was going to come back to bite him with NHL coaches. And sometimes I'm right.
Once in a while. It depends who you ask too. If it's your wife, you're never right.
No, it's true.
Now, there's some other work that's coming out on Recruits.ca. I mean, Dan Meager puts out a great roundup after every game. I would suggest if anyone's not subscribed and not reading Dan's work, you're missing out.
Oh yeah. You remember Rick Mahar played for the St. Louis Blues,
Yeah.
drafted by the Habs. He's actually his cousin.
Oh, wow.
So it's pronounced Mahar, even though, you wouldn't think that when you looked at the name, but thought I'd just add that part. But yeah, Dan's a really good writer, and amazes me how quickly he gets the 5 minutes after the game and he's sending it to me and say, yeah, ready to go. Even Brian's impressed. He's been, Brian Wild's been doing these deadline Call of the Wild articles for years, and he's quite impressed with Dan's, not only his how prolific he is, but his writing. He's a very keen observer, and really glad to have him on board. And there's this other guy that apparently just put up an article too. Did you want to maybe talk about that a bit?
Well, I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, I hear the guy's, he's not that pretty. He's not that smart. He's kind of slow. He's getting old. I mean, there's so much gray in his beard.
Yeah.
I'd hate to toot that horn.
Oh, well, I'll have to toot it for you then, because there's going to be a really interesting article published by yours truly, Blaine Potman, that will be going up, or is it Potvin?
Potvin.
Yeah, Potvin. Yeah, okay.
My wife can't even pronounce it, so.
I didn't anglicize your name like you did Dan's, but okay. Yeah, it's an interesting look, and I mean, you got to start doing it. Soon enough, it'll be all the talk, the expansion draft and stuff, and what teams are going to do. But I found it quite an interesting read, and looking forward to posting that this afternoon, and so people can read it tonight. And talking about Weber and Price and what you do with those guys in particular, and it's a great read. I hope people can have a look at it.
And on that subject specifically, Matt, what would you do with Price and Weber, if anything at all?
You mean as in terms of the expansion draft?
Yeah.
I think I protect them both at this point. I really would. Like Price is shown when he's healthy, and he's got a team in front of him that he can come to play, and I think he still has that in him. I think the issue with Weber is that they still rely on him a little bit too much to drive the offense, even though he doesn't have the wheels. Like he never really did have the wheels, but he's an aging player. But they keep putting him with a guy that he still needs to play the defensive game, but he needs to drive the offense as well. And I think if they can, more or less solidify a partner with him, he can play more of a defensive role, but still be there with his shot. I think it would be beneficial for him and his career moving forward. Right now, people are jumping all over him saying that, you have to, he's a liability, or he's this, or he's not putting the puck in the net or anything like that. But he's still a big, mean defenseman that, I wouldn't want to go into a corner with. He's going to be a guy that's going to show up during the playoffs. He's going to protect his goalie. He's going to protect his teammates. And, is he still that Norris winning or the Norris contender type defenseman? Maybe not. Does he still have a role on this team? Absolutely. I think that I think they'd be silly to expose him, to be honest, or to even ask him.
Yeah, and speaking of exposing, it's that time of year for testicular cancer awareness, and Habs Unfiltered is sponsored by Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineering tools for your family jewels and is now available in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and the EU. And we have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use the code unfiltered20 to get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the movement and the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. In addition to providing the right tools and solutions for safe and easy manscaping, Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. Together, TCS and Manscaped are committed to raising awareness for the most common form of cancer in men aged 15 to 35 and giving support to fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer as part of their We Saved Balls initiative. While you're down there cleaning up your sack, why not go ahead and give them a little investigation for lumps, changes of size, or any pain? Manscaped recommends you check yourself once a month. If you do feel any lumps or swelling, give your doctor a call immediately. In addition to checking yourself regularly, you want to make sure that your sack is looking fresh and clean with Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Inside the Perfect Package, you'll find products and liquid formulations that have been developed to turn your bathroom into a salon for your balls. All liquid formulations use the best ingredients. Some of these liquid tools include the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing deodorant, the Crop Reviver, a spray-on ball toner. The Perfect Package 3.0 also includes anti-chafing performance boxers that keep your package cool and feeling fresh. Join the Manscaped movement and start taking care of your balls today. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code unfiltered20 at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code unfiltered20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code unfiltered20 at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. And that
it was a little swelling. I noticed a little swelling when Caulfield hit the ice there last night there.
Yeah. Well, he's down there. He may as well check it.
Oh, I was a little excited about that, but it's the most excited I've been about a Habs prospect, making his debut since KK. So, I know that hasn't been that long, but hey, the future looks bright for those guys. And just before you did your spiel there, he was talking about Weber and the playoffs. I think that, let's just hold off here and see how Weber plays down the stretch here and in the playoffs too. I think people might be a little jumping the gun a little bit on him as far as how effective he can still be. I have a feeling that come playoff time, he, if they make it, that he'll be a big contributor, especially if they do end up winning a series or two.
They talked about Sherratt, Weber, and Petrie last year, and they talked a lot about it. So Kevin Biasket brought him up almost every time he talked on CBC. Now adding Edmonston to the fold, that's more or less solidified Petrie. I think that we could really have two solid pairings. And right now, yes, with COVID and the Canadians missing time, they're playing a compressed schedule. They're playing 4 games a week. Anybody's going to be tired doing that, especially in a playoff race right now. Anyone's going to be tired out doing that. And is Weber playing injured? Is he this? Is he that? Should his minutes be reduced? Maybe, but he's already said it's a team game. We can talk about me all you want, but it's when it comes down to it, he said that he wants to play even more. Some people didn't like that. But I just think it's a confidence thing for him. We know that he's a huge contributor to the locker room and how the guys are in the locker room, how they are on the bench. And we saw it last night when he scored that goal. The energy that he can bring to that lineup. So
Merrill too, I think could be pretty solid in the playoffs as well. We've already seen how poised he is. Yeah. It's amazing how poised that guy is.
He doesn't do anything pretty. He just does. He goes out there and he defends. He gets in the lanes. He stick checks very well.
Yeah.
And that's what they need to do, right?
No, I think he could be quite effective in the playoffs. Good pickup for what it costs.
Yeah. Especially if they put Romanov on his pairing.
Absolutely.
Romanov can roam around a little bit, use that mobility, throw that big hit, and Merrill will be there to back him up.
Yeah, I want to see a playoff hit from Romanov. Yeah, really bad.
Yeah.
He's gonna come to play.
Yeah, here's hoping that they, it's not going to be Gustafsson come playoff time. Caulfield brings enough to the power play that they don't feel that they have to have Gustafsson in the top six, because I'm more comfortable with Romanov than Gustafsson away from the puck. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Away from the puck, Gustafsson is a hot mess.
Yeah, I find he has been all year and last year, and that's not going to change, I don't think.
No. Good
Even
depth
when
in case of
Caulfield,
injury,
when he
but
went back to get the puck at the point, like, what was he doing? Let the kid grab it and circle. Instead, he's it came darn close to being a freaking breakaway goal.
Yep.
There were 2 or 3 instances during the game where could have cost them the goal. And then even the first game when he blew the tire, and the guy got the breakaway. Like, I mean, he's been lucky so far that his mistakes haven't really cost the team, but that'll change with time.
I can see Kulak maybe coming into the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. I was surprised that Kulak played so well in Montreal against the Flames, his old team, and that he was the only one with the heart that first game.
Yeah.
And he has to sit out. I was surprised that he didn't get another game back against the Flames in those 3 games.
now, Matt, was there anything else you wanted to add or ask?
No, I'll bring up Farrell really quick. We talked about it before we went on air. So Canadians prospect Sean Farrell plays for Chicago Steel. He would have been playing for Harvard University this year if COVID wasn't a thing. He broke 100 points with the USHL, so he's the second player to do it in many years. Ended up his regular season 29 goals, 72 assists for 101 points. He was in 53 games. This is a guy that Cole Caulfield is very, very high on, and tweeted Steele when they picked him. Someone they're really high on, someone that surprisingly we didn't see him like at the juniors or anything like that, even though that I know the juniors I know that the Americans have a really top heavy forward game when it comes to their prospects, and for him to get into the lineup probably was going to be a little bit difficult, but his name was never really even in consideration, which was kind of surprising. This is going to be another guy. I think he's going to be a really good, I think he was more or less a sleeper pick for that draft. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do when he goes into the NCAA and starts his career there.
Yeah, he the coach of the U.S. team ended up taking a couple of his own guys instead, like Patrick Moynihan, and it was a head shaker. That it's an example of why you shouldn't hire coaches that have players that could be on the team, because it's often slanted. It was just like Struble not being picked in for the camp. They picked some defenseman. Everyone, NHL scouts were saying who, they're scrambling to find out who this guy was that ended up going to the camp. They didn't make the team. They had no business being at the camp. McDonald, they thought that it was the Canadian forward playing in the Quebec League that had been invited to this camp. But he should have been on that team. I think there's a lot of NHL scouts that agree with you on that, especially the season he had at the USHL level. But anyway, a little bit of politics got involved there, I think. It was skating and size that were the issues. That was why he dropped at the draft. And I think he is shown this season that he can overcome those deficiencies. Not the height. I mean, you can't overcome that, but the skating has improved, and it's no longer a liability. I think he'll produce at the college level for sure. It'll be how he does as a pro, but he's so smart and skilled with the puck. He's got a great shot, great vision. all those things that I think will make him a good AHL player when he does eventually make the jump. And hopefully he can keep improving his skating. It'll be a key if he does that, and he has a chance of playing someday.
And could we see his teammate and line mate Matt Coronado most likely picked in the first round?
Yeah, for sure. I love Coronado. He's a gamer, really smart too. Makes a lot of great plays, but every game you get the same consistent game with him. Samoskevich is probably going to go in the first round too. So he's got two teammates there. He didn't play most of the year actually with Coronado. It was surprising. They usually had Coronado with Samoskevich,
Yep.
and they played together a lot on the power play and stuff.
Yeah.
All three really good NHL prospects, and I think Farrell has shown that he probably should have been a second round pick. You know, he's played that well, so to get him with the last pick of the fourth round, very impressive.
Absolutely.
Now the men's world's U18 championships has started, and you are clearly going to be taking advantage and watching as much of that as possible to help with building your draft prospectus that's going to be coming out soon. Is there any one player that you're excited to watch out of that tournament?
One player. There's a pile of players that I'm excited to watch. Probably most excited to watch the guys that aren't even draft eligible. Shane Wright and Berard. You know, they look like they're going to be the top picks in the following two drafts. But Mason McTavish would be my choice because he's a good Ottawa Valley boy. I know his dad quite well, and I think he's been underrated a bit for the draft. I have him as a top 10 guy, and for me, that's, especially from a personal standpoint, that's the guy that I'm most excited to see how he performs in this tournament.
Okay.
I think he'd be a good Hab. He's a strong kid. He's a bull out there. He can play center. He can play wing. He can play defensive. He can play offensive. He's got a great shot. Bit of a Anderson type in that regard. I think they could use another prospect like that. Big kid that can go to the net, has very good hands and can score goals. And depending on where they end up picking in the draft, I'd love to see them get McTavish.
I wouldn't mind another player sliding down the draft to the Canadians like Caulfield did.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe this time a big kid as opposed to another 5'7" guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, if the puck goes in the net, I don't care how big you are.
No, that's right. But there won't be too many,
No, you can't have a lineup.
I don't think there's any guys under 5'9" that are going to go in the top 20 this year, but it could be a surprise or two. Coronado's not the biggest guy. He's about 5'10", 5'9", 3/4. But yeah, I think Caulfield and DeBrincat are showing that height doesn't necessarily matter if you can put the puck in the net. So they're the little guys. You see more of them sneaking into the first round. There's one kid, 5'8", Logan Stankoven. I love the kid. He's a Gallagher type. I know it's used all the time, but heart and soul guy, got some skill, very smart, and competes his ass off. I think he'll go in the first round in part because of the success of DeBrincat and Caulfield.
Yeah, I'm sure that this year has been no picnic for any scouts trying to put together their lists. So hopefully this tournament helps solidify a few positions. Before we go, you want to let our listeners know where they can find some of your work and what to expect in the near future?
Same answer as always. No, I'll let you do that.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Grant. If anyone wants to find Grant's work, go to Recrutes.ca. There's plenty of content that's on that website. A ton of great writers, and the draft prospectus, which I find is every year one of those go-to forums for me before the draft to get better familiarized with all of the players, not just those top 30 prospects, but the ones deeper into the draft, the top 100, the top 120, because there's so many that just slide through the cracks. Like we talked about Farrell. There's a kid that slid. He was supposed to go a little higher. He fell to the Canadiens at the end of the 4th round. It's players like that you get a little bit more familiar on before the draft instead of 3 or 4 years down the road. So be sure to go to recruits.ca, subscribe, check it out, subscribe for the Habs coverage, subscribe for the draft coverage. And Grant, as always, thanks for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure.
I'd like to thank all our listeners for staying with us this long and putting up with just me and Matt. I know some people come on here to listen to us just incessantly mock Treg. Don't worry, you can still find that on Twitter. You check out Habs Unfiltered and all of, go on Twitter. You'll find us all there making fun of Treg constantly. And remember, if you are talking about it, so are we.